Imagine what would happen if we spent 6 times as much money on science today as what we do. Imagine the possibilities. Would we have colonised Mars by now? What diseases would we or wouldn't we have? What would we have solved? As a friend of mine put it, would we have more babies alive today if we had spent much more money on science? That's a problem that we're faced with in the world. Recent research shows that 85% of funding in science goes nowhere. So only 15% of money is effective. If we can make 100% of that money effective, that's 6 times more money that's going into science. Science is slow. A lot of the practices of science are slow and outdated, and they relate back to when journals and science was developed many, many centuries ago. So, we've got a problem. Part of the problem with that is to do with the peer review process in academia. So that's, for the uninitiated, which most people are, that's academics reviewing other academics' work. And that's a very, very, very big part of science. But it's slow. It's slower than centuries ago when it all used to happen by mail. Even though we've got technology, science isn't embracing it and isn't moving quickly. And this is a problem for science. So what happens is that the reviews go slowly because scientists aren't incentivised to do the reviews, and after they've done the reviews, most of what they do in the reviews is discarded. It's not kept necessarily by the publishers, and it's not kept by the scientists. And this creates what we call an enormous amount of academic dark matter. So we know that lots and lots of science happens, but we just have absolutely no way of going out and measuring it and understanding it. And that's where a lot of the wastage occurs, because a lot of things have happened in science, but people replicate it again and again and again. So we've got some problems there. Thankfully, we at Publons are starting to solve those problems. And it may seem rather dumb, but it's a very simple thing. We've just started by giving peer reviewers credit for actually doing peer review. So a simple thing, a little bit of recognition goes a long way, as they say. And we've found that peer reviewers actually like getting credit for the work that they do. Because part of what an academic does these days is peer reviewing, but they don't get any recognition for it. They can't put it in their tenure. They can't get promotions based on it because it's invisible. So we've given that peer review some visibility for them. We've started to give them credit for it, and they've started to actually say things like, hell, I woke up on Sunday and I started doing my peer review because I knew I was going to get credit for it with Publons. And interestingly enough, we measure just about everything under the sun to do with peer review. Most peer review is done on Sundays now. So we've actually seen a change in people willing to do things and start doing, an important part of science and speeding up science by working on Sundays. Just to show you how much people want credit for peer review, in terms of the users that we're getting on, we're growing 30% month on month in terms of academics joining our platform. And they're telling us, yes, we've needed this, yes, we want this. Good academic publications should have good peer review processes. Now, why is that important? Well, all that dark matter which was previously getting lost is now being collected by us. And we can start to look at how papers are performing. We can look at what is good science. And that's all just by virtue of the fact that we're giving somebody some credit. We can start collecting an enormous quantity of data about science overall. And that puts us in a very powerful position in the future, as you'll see. What also that means is that people are loading up past peer reviews that they've done. So we're starting to build up a corpus of knowledge around peer review as well, which is really, really helpful, so we can start metricizing and coming up with metrics for previous science that's been done and being able to determine whether it was good science and whether it should be explored further. The biggest thing for this is there are actually a lot of people who might have old peer review and information stored within their systems, and there are a lot of academic publishers. For those of you who don't know about the academic publishing industry, it's immensely lucrative. The margins are about 40 to 50%, and they make billions of dollars a year. They're largely dominated by about 5 really big publishers. We've now got 2 of the 5 largest publishers in the world signed up to using our platform and allowing academics to get credit for doing peer review for some of their journals at the moment. So we're rolling out with a limited number with a view to expanding into all of them. Those trials are going really, really, really well. The uptake has been double what they expected it would be, so we're getting 30% sign-on to Publons for every single peer review that goes out and that's done. 30% of the people are signing on to Publons as a service for that, which is fantastic. The 4th largest publisher in the world, we expect to have them signed on by the end of this month. Gigascience, who's a journal, is part of the 2nd largest publisher in the world, and they're pushing us. There's only one left on our bucket list of 5 that we haven't got, but we have been signed on to their startup incubator program, and they are very, very keen to invest in us and also look at how we can work with their organisation. So we know that we're getting traction, but that's not the end game for us in terms of where we want to get to. So these journals are paying us to deliver credit. They're also paying us to build our database, which is fantastic as far as we're concerned. So we're getting more and more users coming on because they're sending out marketing material for us, telling people to join up to Publons. The big thing is what we're doing and what we allow in terms of speeding up science is in the future we can actually start giving editors of journals who are going to be the most relevant people for them to actually provide the services of peer reviewing articles in science. So that's a really, really big thing. It takes about a year for an article maybe to go from genesis through to submitting it to a journal for publication. Then it can take anywhere from 4 months to a year for it to go through the review process before it's actually published. If that review process is a month, science can move ahead twice as fast as what it is now. And that's a massive thing in terms of speed, let alone in terms of the money that will save science in the future. But the very, very important thing about that is because the editors are spending a lot of time, they can't identify who's going to be good for doing peer review. As we build up a knowledge about all the peer reviewers in the world and what they're experts in, we can start to provide those services back to the publishers, which they are champing at the bit for, and we're building out our database of that by going in and extracting all the old publication records from publishers and feeding them back, selling them back their data in a reformatted form. The universities want to know for tenure and for evaluating their academics how much peer review that they're doing. We're starting to sell, we're in the formative processes of selling services to the universities as well. They are very, very interested at the moment, not worldwide. And finally, funding agencies. So the people that are dishing out that money where 85% of it is wasted, they are really interested in knowing where they should be putting their money and also who they can use to be reviewing the funding applications that they receive so that those funding applications can be determined to be good advancement of science. And we can help them as well in terms of understanding which areas of science are hot. So one of the biggest problems in science at the moment is that you don't know whether a paper is really seminal in science until about 5 years after it's published, because the way science works is by something called citation analysis. And citation analysis basically means that however many times papers in the future reference your paper, that's how cool your paper is. Unfortunately, you can't tell because that's a future event. Whereas what good peer review helps to do is identify papers which are seminal right from the start. And we're also building in post-publication peer review, so anyone who reads a paper can review it after it's been published and comment on how important they feel that paper is in science. So that's a very, very good way for us to help move ahead science and move science forward and make sure that we don't waste that 85% of the money that's happening now. We're the largest peer review platform in the world. I mean, to be fair, we're probably the only peer review platform in the world at the moment, so it's not a hard claim to make. We do have some competitors. They're coming at it from a different angle in terms of just being able to give kudos to academics in general. And that might be just taking everything that's happening online with an academic and branding that up and giving them some kudos. We're very specifically focused on peer review because we see it as such an important part of science and also just such a massive area. We do have a very cunning end plan in terms of where we see the organisation, but we don't share that at the moment under confidentiality with a wide public audience. And we have some exit options in terms of where we've spoken to various players in terms of where our exit options might exist. We've got a good team. I'm the chairman, so don't ask me any really detailed operational questions because I'll just not be able to answer them very, very well. Our CEO, unfortunately, couldn't be here today. He's moved to London to be closer to where the action is in terms of the journals and getting them on board at the moment. And we're currently looking at making hire in North America, Eastern Seaboard, to to sell to journals over there. But all the technical and marketing team is based here in Wellington. Oh, and they are rocket scientists, some of them as well, so that's kind of cool. Where are we at in terms of the business? We've raised just shy of $800,000 to date. We've probably got about 4.5 months runway left, and we're looking at doing a Series A round at the moment for around $2 million on a pre-money of somewhere between 5 and 7. We're still working that through. We've got strategic investors who are interested in coming in the publishing world, but we're weighing up whether or not how that will affect our business at the moment. That is Publons, hopefully in 5 minutes.
That must have been long. Yeah, how many minutes was that? Yeah. No, thank you so much. I have to say that this is a new world to me. The only thing I didn't really understand, congratulations on getting so many of the journals and the really big ones on your list of clients. But what does that mean? How many actual individuals are creating reviews? How many are you working with right now, like users, if we would call them?
So the big publishers, they control, the 5 largest publishers control about 80% of the journal market in the world.
And how many are you right now seeing in your system are using this? How many are actually creating reviews right now in your product?
So there's 2 bits. So there's end users, people who have profiles. We've got 16,000 end users at the moment, and that's what's growing at anywhere between 30 and 50% a month. A lot of the growth more recently has been driven out of our strategy with the journals. So at the moment we're integrated with 30 journals, and with the clients that we've signed on, they have 2,000 journals. So we've got growth to go from 30 journals to 2,000 journals just with those clients. If we look at the clients that we've got who we should have signed up by the end of the month, you'd be looking at around 10,000 journals in total.
And do they subscribe to your...
They pay per journal to have us come in and give the academics credit for reviewing for those journals. So they'll validate it for us, they'll send the email out for us saying get credit for doing this review, and they pay us for giving the credit through the Publons platform, because we're seen as being independent of the journals, and if we can capture all peer review data, we're the only source that can do that at the moment. So there's a certain element of speed to market in this in terms of our competitive advantage. If we have 5 largest journals and then start working our way through all the other smaller ones in the world on board, then we'd probably have around 40 to 50% of the market really quickly, and then makes it very hard for someone else to come in, or the largest journal player, which is Elsevier, the largest publisher, to do it themselves, because they've got 25% of the market, but they won't have 75% of the market.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it to you, Bill.
So, so I love this, and I totally get it. I see what you're doing, and I know it's a huge pain point. That everybody in the system hates the fact that the whole peer process takes so long. And it's an interesting approach. The interesting approach is that if we can give reviewers credit, we can speed up the process. That's an interesting insight. I'd love to talk to you more about kind of how you came up with the insight. But first of all,
I can't take credit for the insight.
You do?
I'm just the chairman. I invested in the business.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you fell in love with the insight as well.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
I've got a father who's an academic, and I can't help myself. I'm just falling into it all the time.
Okay. So now I'm trying to do the math. So you start out saying 85% of the money on science is wasted. Is that what you said?
Yes.
85% of the money on science is wasted. And then you make this leap into, if only we can change the review process from 12 months to 1 month, that would be a great boon. Okay, but I can't get my math straight on this. That doesn't solve the 85% problem.
So there's 2 issues which lead to the 85% happening. One is research being duplicated, and research gets duplicated when research doesn't get published quickly enough.
Okay.
And then the second thing is research going on wasted endeavour in the first place. So an area which is never going to be productive.
Yeah.
And part of that falls back to when I was talking about the citation analysis and not knowing what's important because it's not being identified early in the process, whereas we've got a way of saying, look, this research is an important area of research because when we get good pre-publication peer review followed by post-publication peer review on our site and people rating, so we have a rating system, people rating articles, we can tell what's important science and what science should then be followed through in terms of streams, and we can provide that to funding agencies and people who need that information. We've already been out and talked to all the funding agencies, and we've got an advisory board just for funding agencies to understand what their pain points are and how they evaluate how they should be directing scientific spend, and they're extremely interested in having our information. But on top of that, they also just have a problem of not necessarily knowing what's good science because they can't find quality peer reviewers from a global pool to say, is this somewhere where we should be spending our money? And so sometimes they're spending money without actually knowing whether it's having gone through a really good validation process. So we're also helping them out with that.
Okay. So that's pretty compelling. So it's a lot more than just the peer review and
ultimately
the speed of the peer review. But because clearly the cycle of every scientific experiment is a lot longer than the peer review. So generally it is, right? And then the other thing I was struggling with was this issue of so the scientists I know, their complaint is that pick a number, any number, but 90% of the papers submitted for publication should not be bothered with anyway.
Yes.
So that because of the publisher perish problem, you've got all these papers that are clogging the system that, really are not contributing. But now I'm not sure if I'm hearing that you solved that problem because...
Not discreetly at present.
Right.
It is something that's on our roadmap in terms of things that we do need to solve.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, just the problem of people not getting credit for peer review is our basics. First step forward.
Yeah.
There are so many issues that we could address in science to be honest, Bill. We've got a roadmap and we're working towards them, but the end goal is obviously very large in terms of helping science out as an overall thing, and we see that there's quite a good way of engaging with through peer review to actually achieve that as our end goal.
Okay. No, so now I get it. I love it. It is really interesting. I'm just suggesting to you as feedback that the 85% number, you don't quite pay off on that in your pitch.
Yep.
And it hurts. It hurts your credibility a little, but maybe it was just that it was hard to hear everything you were saying. But you made a comment: if 100% were productive, then we'd be have six times more science.
Yes.
But you're not even pretending that by accelerating peer review, you're going to get to 100%.
No,
right?
No,
okay.
We're not.
But you kind of juxtaposed it in a way, kind of, it was a little bit, right?
That's how you started.
That's the salesman.
Okay. So you get my point?
I agree.
Okay.
Yes, look, we're not seeking to solve 100% of that.
I think just as maybe all the answers should be a bit shorter, because I think we're, so we can ask more, get shorter answers.
So you're saying we're out of time. That's what he's saying. All right.